Chris from Florida. Since Dishonored 2 launched with no reviews, I figured I would wait a week to see what kind of scores it got. Since I had already waited a week, I figured I might as well wait one more to see if it went on sale for Black Friday. It did, and I just picked it up for $35. Since it got good reviews and I'm a fan of the series, I gladly would have paid $60 on launch day. What do you think? Did Bethesda's plan regarding reviews backfire?
I don't know. We haven't seen, I don't know, sales or any of that sort of stuff. Like drawing direct lines between review scores and availability to sales has never really quite existed.
Yeah, it's not quite a one-to-one. Yeah, there could be, right?
Word of mouth has an effect. Yeah, certainly, but it's it can still be kind of nebulous. I think the thing we're seeing more is you see more and more publishers talking about their week launches, it's got a long tail. Like Ubisoft came out about Watch Dogs and said that, and sure enough, I think the second week of Watch Dogs in some territories at least was much better than launch week, but it was also Black Friday, so maybe that had the actual impact.
It's their launch window.
Yeah. I don't know. We'll have to wait and see if day one sales really take a backseat and don't matter anymore.
Yeah.
Or will sale tracking just completely blow up because no one is combining physical and digital the way that they need to tell the whole story or whatever.
Yeah.
It's been some interesting stuff floating around lately talking about is this is big game, are big games done because they aren't moving the way they used to and all this sort of stuff.
The same conversation was taking place 4 or 5 years ago or something as the consoles transitioned.
Right.
Did you guys talk about the GameStop earnings call or their investment call?
No.
They basically say it's same thing that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Is it tough? Can you judge the industry by how a physical media store sold through on big games, or are people moving away and buying digital? They had,
and keep in mind that
worse than expected stuff.
And GameStop is going to be double impacted by digital sales because that's used games that aren't going back to GameStop that are then being flipped into new sales.
Right.
Is that the thing that is actually destroying these week one physical sales? Is people buying digital or buying other games digitally and then not being able to flip them into used game money and turning that into other stuff. There's
it's a different economy.
Yeah, totally. There are so many different moving parts on this stuff that I think it's going to take some time for people to kind of wrap their minds around what is the video game industry, what is the expectation for sales and all this other stuff as they kind of charge forward into more and more of the digital stuff.
Yeah. It was crowded out there for a while in that AAA space, quote unquote AAA, with Gears, Titanfall, Battlefield, Call of Duty.
Felt like old times for a little bit.
It was
for a hot second.
But then kind of gone again.
It was all October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
October and then early November.
Yeah.
Which that's when it always is still. But
usually I feel like you see more in mid-November than we've seen this year.
Mm-hmm.
It just feels like everything kind of cleared out.
And September is usually maybe a little bit hotter.
Yeah.
Or just a little bit more packed. Not necessarily the quality of the game.
Window,
But whatever, big games are expensive and they aren't necessarily always returning on investment the way they used to. So it's that has to be at least slightly spooky for people that are out there making the Call of Duties of the world and that sort of stuff. Not only for whatever issues Call of Duty may have as this kind of aging franchise, but just generally speaking, are people interested in those types of games anymore? The same way they used to be. What are people interested in? And then you start to go pulling back out into games as a service, Overwatch, things that people are going to play for a year or more instead of buying games. Getting out there and going I bought this year of DLC for, I don't know, Destiny, The Division, whatever. And so they're going to focus on playing that nonstop with their friends and not buy the 5 games they probably would have bought instead.
Right.
So that's only going to lead to more of that. And you want to talk about the death of the single player game. That's probably how it happens. Is it's not that everyone goes multiplayer is going to be the thing that keeps people from selling it back used. That's not the issue. It's we need to get them to buy our game and get them to monetize additionally in our game, so that they buy some skins and buy some of this and buy some of that to make up for the lost revenue we get by not selling 9 different games in this fiscal year.
But that sort of happened with Season Pass and DLC for single-player games, where it's hey, you buy this game, we're not going to raise the prices of games, we're going to make you put $40 down when you buy the game additionally if you want to get
You
all
want to get
in.
the whole thing.
Right. If you want to get all in
Yeah.
on the rest of the
And
content.
then, like,
that's coming out.
and you know, there was a story. Gosh, I wish I remember where it was. I want to say it was a GamesIndustry.biz story that there was a like quotes from Ubisoft saying like, yeah, compulsory DLC is not going to happen anymore for these types of games because people just don't don't want it. And you have cases where like Titanfall, all the maps are free. You know, like Gears, all the maps are free, and they have additional options for cosmetics and stuff like that.
So what would that mean? That means like when you say compulsory DLC, you mean like we're not guaranteeing having like a tail on the content for these games,
Or you know, they're going to do it where it makes sense, not just to do it.
like it wouldn't be a mandate within.
Because I think they're finding that like that's not helping people stick around on a game.
Oh wow.
I mean, to be fair, that like a lot of that stuff has sort of poisoned the well because a lot of that long tail DLC has generally been pretty bad. Like, you know, like a lot of that Assassin's Creed DLC, for instance, was like pretty worthless.
And it's been stuff that's come along so late that you've moved on.
Yeah.
Like
Some of
Assassin's
it-
Creed is usually not a game that is going to be the game you play for a year, and adding 2 more story bits over the course of the year isn't the thing that pulls you back.
Yeah, I don't think they ever. I feel like there was some stuff in the Ezio campaign that was pretty good, hit or miss.
There was one,
and
or
especially
two
the way that
pieces of
they
decent-
handled it was by inserting things back into the story, not something that took place after you had finished
It was
it.
like
but,
missing chapters.
Right.
Yeah,
So at that point, you had already forgotten what was going on, and it was just weird.
But stuff like The Witcher, I think, did it really well.
Right.
Where they did like post-campaign DLC.
Well,
that was,
because
like,
those DLCs are like telling their own
and
self-contained
they were
stories.
very
right?
big, and like they're like, oh, the continuing adventures here.
Like,
It's
you
like,
can tell the effort-
that's like Left Behind.
Yeah, the effort was put into those things not because they needed to be monetized, but because those were the individual stories they wanted to be able to tell outside of that main quest line.
Yeah,
And if you make them really well, then they'll sell. You have a good reason to be making it, and you're putting the effort into it. Like that seems like that'll translate into people going like, oh, maybe I do want to see it.
To be fair, like the Witcher 3 is a incredibly high bar
Yes.
for like storytelling and writing, and like
and
their
that's
DLCs are just going to be better for world building
But
and
Mass
stuff.
Effect had very good
Mass
DLC.
Effect was another example
Minerva's
of
Den.
doing it well.
Yes,
Yeah.
it can be done well.
The
It just
second
so
best DLC
often
that year.
isn't.
But you know, and then you have multiplayer games where you have developers now realizing that paid DLC splits the player base in really negative ways, and so they have to figure out ways around that. Call of Duty is still selling it this year.
The way around that are loot boxes.
Yeah,
Right.
Crates.
I mean, yes, you are 100% right. Like Overwatch or, you know, cosmetics. Like that's the thing that Titanfall is about to do tomorrow is like the first map goes out to people that pre-ordered the game, and 3 days later, I think everybody else gets it. But then also it's not loot boxes. They're rolling out a store for cosmetics.
Oh, so you don't get blind chests or anything like that?
No,
Okay.
No, it's like, hey, do you want this skin? You can pay for this skin.
I think I would much rather have that.
Yeah, totally.
Well, it just seems so crazy nowadays. Well, you can just buy the thing you want.
Right, I know.
Is it exclusive skins that you can only pay real money for, or is it like, hey, do you want this red and black one?
They are not adding a grind currency. They are, hey, we are adding some skins if you want to buy them. Maybe some pilot executions or something like that. And then there's also in-game changes, but that's free. That stuff's not part of this.
But stuff that you can't get as like an advocate gift or whatever.
Right.
No. Okay.
Yeah. And so I think that's, I mean, especially in the multiplayer landscape, like, yeah, it's either loot boxes or something that says like, hey, anyone can play all the content here, because once we start selling maps, then you have to build the cases for like, here's the person who didn't buy the maps.
Yeah.
There are only 12 of you, so we're never going to be able to match you up well enough. And then here are all the people that buy the maps, and they're over here, or maybe they only bought map pack 2, but not 1 and 3. And you know, that ruined a lot of matchmaking over the years. So
I think Battlefield ran into some of that.
Yeah,
where like
you can't be on this server, not because it's
all
even
the
on the
players
map
went
from
there.
DLC,
Yeah.
but and then all the players who bought premium or whatever, they all went there. So if you didn't have that shit, you were like,
Right.
what? I'm sorry. All that stuff has had to transition, and I think the multiplayer stuff is finding the right place. And like Titanfall is actually one of the first cases where I thought about it. Like cosmetics usually I don't care about, but in that game, like I had thought about it and like, oh wait, I actually already spent fucking $20 on some skins in that game because I went to fucking eat food to get a code, and the food sucked. So it was really just like it was extra money I had to pay in terms of a soul tax.
There's a definitely a story to be told about the hidden costs of games. I'm sure people have written it up already, but like, you know, when you talk about a locked in at $60 or $50 price, and then talk about like the stuff you're really paying for, which is you're paying to play online multiplayer on consoles, right? Like if you're going to play a multiplayer game on a console, you've already kicked up $60 to Sony or Microsoft to get in on that multiplayer.
Yeah.
If you're buying map packs, if you're buying single player DLC, you're buying season pass stuff, we might have been at $60 for a while, but I feel like I am paying more than that generally for games I really like.
Yeah, I'm putting more money into games I like and playing fewer games. I think that's the thing that we're talking about, and that's the thing that is destroying or has the potential to destroy a lot of what we know as the big budget games right now.
Or put stuff into games that feel more like hooks, that are like, come on, just give me a little bit more. And like that's where I think they're trying to make their money. The stuff that feels a little more like, you're going to lock that up, that feels weird. Especially if you came from an age, which we all did, of this stuff where this was generally unlocked, baked into a disc at some point. That was like, what's on the disc is what you get.
If you finish the game, you unlock no more skins. Hooray.
Yeah. Or this character, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, great, I can play as this character, but only if you beat the game. And so like I'm past that. Like I gave up that fight a long
the world
time.
changed.
Yeah.
It's not even a fight. It's like, hey, like we found another way to stabilize this and do this. Like
we had that talk.
Yeah.
Like we were around for that talk of, hey, this should be baked into the game.
Yeah. That was the online pass talk. That was the EA selling cheats talk.
Right.
That was the
that was going from looking up cheat codes on the internet to paying for the cheat codes.
So it was the day one DLC discussions.
Yeah. It was like the best party member in Mass Effect 3 being a fucking $10 DLC add-on.
And that's fucked up. Like there are ways to, in a game that is like bad and feels like it's missing content without that stuff. That's the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But generally speaking, I feel like that's like the people that have been doing this, the publishers, the developers that have been doing this have been okay about that stuff. Where I feel
better.
like there have not been as many games where you go like, man, this game feels like it's missing a huge chunk that they happen to be selling.
There have been those games.
There have
Like
been
Arkham City or something with the Catwoman and stuff.
Well, but like that Catwoman stuff.
I mean,
The way they implemented it, I thought was shitty because you still saw the stuff in world and it was like weird, but like
it's a whole character you're playing as, though, with her own like kind of specific story stuff.
But all that stuff was shit.
Yeah,
it wasn't
remember,
great, but
I remember
it
not
did
liking
seem
it. Like every time I had to play Catwoman, I just wanted to get back to being Batman.
Yeah. So like that stuff, like they yanking that out of the game, I actually think made for a better game.
Yeah.
But you still had the hooks in there, so it was like that was weird.
EA, I felt like, really pushed the needle too far on a lot of that stuff. Like they seemed at the front of like selling
Online passes was them,
and like
that was them.
And like they're like, I think it was like Need for Speed series where it was just, I think it was Need for Speed where like the store was just like hubcaps and everything, and like just buy all this stuff for money out of the game, like,
accelerator pack, and,
all that stuff. And they were real bad with pre-order bonuses for like Dragon Age and Mass Effect, where it was like
Warner Brothers really pioneered the what the fuck are these pre-order bonuses stuff. I feel like they were definitely the ones that were the most confused about.
I don't know. Dragon Age had like a spreadsheet you needed to look at to see like.
I mean, so did like every at least the last two or three Batman games. Yeah,
right.
I feel like some of that's course corrected, or maybe I've just become desensitized to it.
I think some of it is course corrected. Yeah, because I think that's like consumers have kind of spoken on a lot of that stuff, and that's why the business model has changed or is in the process of changing. To be more about like, hey, maybe we just put this stuff in the game and then sell you cosmetics. And
what was that gun club thing that EA did? Was that a pay to be a member of the gun club and get extra guns?
I thought that was more of a loyalty program.
Yeah. Okay.
You bought all their shooters.
That's like
you got early access to stuff. Did you get the beta?
They used to do the old EA profile thing with their sports games, where it would track all your stats across like all the PS2 era sports games and stuff. But then, the Gun Club, I
think that was just them trying to apply that sports mentality to just Battlefield.
Hey, you played a lot of our shooters. Here's a bonus gun.
Yeah, but then at some point that just became like a Battlefield loyalty bonus of like, you played all these other Battlefield games, and so you got this dog tag.
Do they still have their sports club
yes, they
thing?
still have sports.
They still make sports games?
Yeah.
But I don't know that they necessarily join them together the same way that they used to do. Because now it's like EA Access, and
okay.
At some point they were like, just pay us to play this game 3 days early.
Right.
What was the initial pitch for Elite? Was it the stat tracking? Could everyone access the stat tracking at the beginning?
Call of Duty Elite was a season pass plus the stat tracking,
and then eventually they made the stat tracking free for anyone, right?
Yeah,
with the next one,
because Battlefield had free stat tracking,
right,
and just made them look bad right out of the gate.
Yeah.
So they went, all right, well.
It was like the app where you could change your loadout in the grocery store line, like that was for Elite only. Yeah.
And then they took
those
all that
were really
stuff out.
wild times. The second screen experience times where everyone thought, man, people are just going to really want to be standing in line at the fucking grocery store looking at their guns.
There's a Battlefield 1 app that I'm pretty sure lets you change loadouts. Like, they're still.
I think they patched that in also to the game where you can do it between.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
They also
so like
didn't
when
make
I played it, it didn't seem like that was in there.
I think that might have got patched.
They also didn't make that a selling point. There was a period where like the second screen shit was very much like, oh man, this is going in the E3 presentation because this is awesome, and it never was.
Like I bet on paper that makes sense, right? You got your phone. Like, why would you back out of a match? You could just fix your loadout on your phone, but like that's not what I want to do.
No.
I think the only second screen experience I ever enjoyed was the Madden one where you could use the screen to basically dial up plays and all that stuff, so you didn't have to sit there in the menus like scrolling through stuff. You could just kind of use the touch screen to.
It was
get
okay
in
Fallout 4 because it just gave you a bigger, better interface for inventory management, like better than their clunky menu stuff.
God, it was bad.
And
I really
Need for Speed had that thing where you in the one that was all connected, you could like hurt or harm other people in your game. You could just like spend your points to like, oh, here, have some nitro, here, have some spike strips thrown at you
from like your iPhone.
Yeah, and it barely worked at launch, and it didn't work at all at launch, and then they eventually got it under control. And I spent time on it. I was like, why would anyone do this? It was like the multiplayer stuff was already such a poorly conceived idea in that game that it was just like, here are some strangers you can fuck with, and you won't really see what happens to them because you're not near them in the game. So you're just over here going, I don't know, here, have a helicopter. Fuck you. Like, just the dumbest thing.
I remember covering Ground Zeroes in Japan before it came out, and like all of my questions were about like, how big is this game? How does this tie into the Phantom Pain? Let's talk about story stuff. And they tried to steer every single question. Like, hey, the second screen app, I think that should really be the cornerstone for your story. Like, you can call in Snake's helicopter from your iPad.
I don't know.
Like, yeah, but how is this game going to be more than 2 hours long? Like,
and it's anyone Konami got out of video games.
Yeah.
There was that one where you play as Tingle and you like play.
That was fun with the link cable. The Tingle tuner.
Yeah, that's cool.
I'll stand by the Tingle
most
tuner.
Excited I've ever heard a person be about the Tingle tuner.
The Tingle tuner was all right, and it took you to that island in Animal Crossing if you hooked up your GBA.
Yeah, you could go to the island and do stuff over there.
You could do the Pac-Man thing.
That stuff was all right.
Yeah.
For what it was.
Islands are cool.
Yeah.
Wasn't there?
And then we got the Wii U out of that.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a story recently or something just came up where like Bobby Kotick is like the richest man in the world?
He's like one of the highest paid executives.
I think he's the highest paid
now.
executive in video games and one of the highest paid in the United States. Finally,
all right,
they got to retain him.
The kid made it.
It's about time Bobby Kotick had something good happen to him.
He's got the kill code to the World of Warcraft server, and like he can use it.
Okay,
he's the only one.
I mean, we'll see long term though, because like. Right. What they have right now basically is Call of Duty and World of Warcraft. Well, I mean, whatever. Blizzard is the
whole Blizzard machine.
Blizzard, like Hearthstone and Overwatch, obviously also printing money. Like Blizzard is just the golden goose or whatever.
That new Hearthstone expansion comes out on Thursday.
Yeah. But outside of Blizzard, I mean, like Call of Duty has been around for a while.
It's still doing quite well.
I know it's doing well, but it's not doing quite what it used to. But
hey, that Deadpool HD update, man, that really sealed it.
What I mean is like
5.
Yeah, obviously. You know, like for a long time. Call of Duty had Tony Hawk, and then they had Guitar Hero, and then they had Call of Duty. Like they had big thing after big thing,
and then last year they had Call of Duty, and then Guitar Hero and Tony Hawk.
Destiny.
So like, well, Destiny is seems pretty big, but I don't know that it's as big.
It made a lot of money out of the gate, and that's. It made enough money to where when they put out that next thing and then they put it on PC. Also,
I mean, if Destiny 2 is as good as it could be, then maybe that is
that was Destiny always seemed like it was coming along at the right time to be the thing that they jettison off all the resources onto as Call of Duty eventually, does what it's going to do.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I hope so.
But if you
like to see Destiny get better,
if you think about Destiny in terms of like what are major new IPs in the last 5 years,
that's up there.
That's
way up there.
I think it is probably the top. Actually,
it's near the top. I mean, Overwatch
is fucking huge, of course.
I mean, it doesn't have the history that Destiny now has, but yes, I think Overwatch will be a long tail thing.
It's kind of a checkered history, but
But it's tough to think of new IPs that are like, this will probably go on to be a franchise.
Right. Yeah, Watch Dogs.
I think now they can because they actually made a good Watch Dogs game.
2 actually is good enough to set the table for them to continue.
I was very
Watch Dogs
ready.
1, a ton of people bought it, and it was disappointing.
Dishonored is now a successful franchise.
Sure. Yeah.
Is it?
I don't know if it's top tier, but it's recognizable.
I don't know how well it's selling.
I don't know how it's selling, but like the second one is being quite well received. So
I think Gears goes away for a while.
I feel like they just brought it back, and it's a new trilogy.
It sounds like they set up a 5, right?
Yeah, 4 sets up a 5 for sure,
pretty directly.
But that's probably like 2 years from now.
Yeah.
Well, obviously
At
they
least,
need time
yeah.
to make another one, but I bet they do turn around and make a Gears 5.
Yeah, definitely.
Video game franchises, they're
Yeah.
all over the place.
I mean, it's good that I like that Destiny is a fairly new one. Titanfall is a fairly new one. Overwatch, Watch Dogs. Like, I'm tired of. I like Assassin's Creed a lot, but I'm tired of it. So
I'm grateful that there was a year off this year.
even if Watch Dogs is the evolution of Assassin's Creed, it is nice to have a different.
And it
game.
feels enough like its own thing to where it isn't just like this is just filling the Assassin's Creed shaped hole in their schedule.
like let's take a break from Far Cry and Assassin's Creed, and let's go with some new.
Yeah, I think they're another company that probably needs to come up with some more new stuff because their old stuff has been around a little too long.
a long time.
Yeah.
I mean, like talking like a decade.
Yeah, like
it's-
Assassins. I mean, they've got the movie coming out, so you could argue that that's maybe gonna
New launching point.
blow it up into something even bigger and weirder. But,
Well, I mean, so Syndicate had definitely laid some groundwork for them to finally go back into that weird ass meta plot and do some stuff. So we'll see with that. I just feel like they are now ready to launch off and do some different shit. Hopefully, with that series.
Yeah, I think we're in a pretty good spot.
I mean, Battleborn.
There's never been a better.
Yeah,
time.
the biggest
Obviously,
franchise.
of course.
Yes.
biggest game of the year.
Maybe Nintendo